There are things you consider to be true. The sky is blue. There are 365 days in a year. The body is made of cells. And pineapple doesn't belong on pizza. But there's a serious problem here. And that problem is that we don't know. Philosophers from all over the world and throughout history have recognized this problem without fail. Everything we know is based on key assumptions about ourselves, our perceptions, and our surroundings. I intend to explore these assumptions with you, and hopefully we can learn something about the nature of truth. There we go. Hallucinations are a common part of life for many people due to disorders and drug addictions. Essentially, hallucinations are a transformation of the sensory data entering your brain. By the time you receive the information, it has so departed from reality that everything you see, hear, and smell is false. Hallucinators often cannot tell the difference between reality and their hallucinations. This leads us to a very important question. How do you know you aren't hallucinating right now? The first assumption you have made since birth is that the information you receive from your senses is true. For example, you depend on information received by your retina traveling to your brain so you can use the information to plan your actions. However, the only reason we know this process exists is because of observations we have made using those very processes. If you read a book packed with information that claimed on the first page, this book is true, would you believe it? Probably not, especially if the book wants you to depend entirely on it for everything, like your senses do. So using your sensory inputs as evidence for their own functionality is a circular argument. And so your eyes are lying. You've fallen for the world's most epic prank. And this applies to all your sensory organs. Your entire life you've been assuming that these things work and based every decision you've made on their advice. Let's say you don't pay that much attention in math class. When you attempt to do your homework, you don't have the steps right. I don't know. Maybe you thought PEMDAS was PEDSMAT or something. The point is, you were functioning on correct presuppositions. You knew that the math problem you needed to solve was 2 + 2, but you used an incorrect reasoning process and came up with the wrong answer. You get a 0 on your math and must retake the class. How do you know that your daily reasoning processes are the true ones? The second assumption we make is that our reasoning processes work. We take information from our senses and from our memories, which again are probably lies, and use it as a set of hypotheses to reach conclusions about our environment. And then we decide it's a good idea to act based on those questionable conclusions. For example, let's pretend you're a gambler on a Friday night in Las Vegas. Okay, there we go. Dangerous idea. But what would life be without a little danger? At the slot machine, you recognize that there are 3 slots and 5 different fruit that can occupy each slot. It costs 7 cents to play. 75 cents. If each slot is occupied by the same fruit, you earn $100. Using the laws of probability, you calculate that you make a profit of 5 cents on average by pulling the lever and stay up all night doing so. But how do you really know you will make that? In other words, what makes you think you can trust those laws of probability? Because that's how it works? How do you know that? All our mathematical and logical laws are based on intuition and observations, both of which have no evidence to support them. That's how it works isn't evidence. So we rely not only on dubious senses, but a dubious reasoning strategy called logic as well, and treat them as undeniably true realities, basing our every action on information provided by them. We're living on a foundation of baseless assumptions. We believe that our logic, our senses, and our memories are true. But it turns out these assumptions tend to work well. For instance, when we use our logic and perceptions to construct scientific theories and use those scientific theories as a framework to build cars, rockets, and computers, our devices, amazingly, actually work. And on a simpler, much more personal level, we take for granted our perception of our surroundings. This allows us, for example, to know when to cross the street and not die in a car crash. In other words, our perceptions, although technically dubious, provide a framework for us to act successfully. Maybe we can redefine truth to fit our needs. If we rephrase the definition of truth as that which can be indefinitely demonstrated, then this should encompass our needs, assuming we also take observation, memory, and logic for granted. For example, you can indefinitely demonstrate that I am on this stage by observing me. You can indefinitely demonstrate that the United States of America became independent in 1776 by reviewing primary documents. And you can indefinitely demonstrate that 2 + 2 is equal to 4 using our logical framework. There's yet another aspect to this problem. If we each depend independently on dubious assumptions and information from our senses, memory, and reasoning, how are we supposed to agree with each other on anything? We each perceive our surroundings differently. Humanity doesn't share one pair of eyes. How are we supposed to communicate with each other if our perceptions are different? We then must communicate about a subjective reality. The subjective reality is made up of all our perceptions and everything we think is true. Two people's subjective realities may differ from each other, and by communicating with each other, they can enhance their subjective realities by merging them. For example, if you heard thunder and I saw lightning, we can combine those ideas to form a subjective reality in which there was both thunder and lightning. In addition to the subjective reality, we also must assume the presence of an objective, infallible reality, which is the source of our perceptions. Belief in objective reality implies something is true no matter what you think of it. If you wear red-tinted glasses, that doesn't mean the sky is purple. It's still blue, or at least we must assume that is so. This assumption is essential to cooperative living. If we don't assume that our individual perceptions reflect a common reality or objective truth, we can't communicate about reality or cooperate within it. People must attempt to communicate correctly so that the subjective reality lines up with the objective reality, because a situation where they differ too greatly can lead to a disaster. Consider a situation where a group of hikers is traveling on a dirt path. Just ahead of them, a thief discreetly digs a ditch and covers it with leaves. The ignorant hikers all see the surface of leaves, perceive and communicate to each other that they can indeed walk over this surface, and finally fall down the hole while the thief runs with their supplies. This was caused by the subjective reality of a pile of leaves on a dirt path deviating too greatly from an objective reality of an insidious trap. Since we rely on each other to construct our subjective reality, which must coincide with an outer objective reality, civilizations across the world have deemed lying as sinful. In an era of fake news, competing narratives, and power politics, we need to remain ever alert, ensuring not only that the information we receive is true, but most importantly, that the information we share is true, lest we fall into a ditch dug by a thief. In conclusion, you have no confirmation that your senses tell the truth. You have no confirmation that your memories tell the truth. You have no confirmation that your reasoning processes tell the truth, especially since they were largely based on your memories and senses. However, despite this sea of ambiguity, you must take a leap of faith and assume that these basic processes do tell the truth, in part about an objective reality. Taking this assumption also allows us to combine our perspectives and communicate about objective reality. which must line up with this objective reality so we can act properly and avoid disaster. We depend on each other to construct this subjective reality, so we need to look for and share the truth constantly. Modern rationalism discourages assumptions in general, but taking those mentioned in this talk not only allows you to live well, but forms the basis for scientific inquiry, which has vastly improved living conditions all over the world. If you take away anything from this presentation, remember, don't lie, don't dig ditches, and don't go gambling with rose-tinted glasses. Thank you.